Trying to center myself
Yes.
here. What I don't like is that window over my right shoulder. Trying to center myself
Yes.
here. Uh-oh. Getting an echo.
We are live on YouTube.
Hello, live on YouTube. Welcome to RevThink Live. It's good to be with you today and this week's weekly briefing.
It is good to be with you. I guess I should hit record on the Zoom side, shouldn't I, Mr. Tim?
Let's do it.
Record on this computer. Okay, and with that, I'm going to dip the music because otherwise, you know, the YouTube licensing gods will shut us down. Right. All right. Well, Tim, it's good to be with you. Happy Thursday, January 28th. It is 1 minute after the hour. I'm going to stop my screen share. So before we get into this topic today, because we're going to dive into this notion of the Challenger sale, which is kind of cool, something that you and I have been talking about for a few days now. I first wanted to give everyone just some quick updates on what do we see happening in the industry now. What's going on with studios and production companies that we're seeing certain patterns. What can you share?
Yeah, it's a good time of year to ask that question. We're finishing up a lot of our clients' quarterly Q4 reviews, which then obviously becomes a whole annual review, 2020 annual review. As we know, the pandemic year, there's some obvious patterns that we're seeing client over client. That Q2 quarter takes a major hit for almost every segment of the industry. There's a few segments that interestingly kind of retained and had some growth in Q2. But agencies, production studios alike, live event groups and what have you, all of them sort of hit some kind of low end there. But what's really interesting is out of all of our clients, the spectrum that we're seeing is most clients retained about between, honestly, 87% of revenue, so almost nearly the same revenue, all the way up to 212%. So some clients doubled. And I want to say this, like they easily doubled, because if you think about a bad quarterly two or a bad start to the beginning of the year, that means they almost did 4 times the work at the end of the year. And those of you who are feeling that pattern really know that you're in crisis one way or another, aren't you? So if you're losing revenue, you're one side of crisis, but there's a very different crisis as your company's growing. And a lot of engagements that we've had over the last 2 or 3 months have been putting in those systems and routines so that people can get things to scale. So we can see it now in numbers. It's kind of cool to look back on that review, but I think most of our clients are kind of feeling that. There are the few that we know that have made some major cuts, kind of retain profit margins, which is good for them, and then are really dealing with 2021 in a very different way. But you, Joel, you've seen a lot of positioning, different people taking a different position, doing a pivot. There's a plethora of demo reels I've seen in my inbox. So a lot of people are really working hard on the marketing side.
Yeah, there's been a few shops that have renamed, and they use the opportunity as a way to pivot and start telling the new story that's even more true, more curiosity inspiring. And of course, we'll talk about that more in a minute. But yeah, I think I've been surprised how like when we saw Q4 developing, we said, wow, people are making up for lost time, because Q2 was certainly rough. Q3 was certainly rough. But then all of a sudden, as things shifted, and then I've already had a few owners tell me we're pretty much booked for Q1. Like we're really struggling to fit people in until end of March, 1st of April. And I was never in that position. You know, when I was running my shop, I always had January, February were always really sketchy for me. So I hope that's something that everyone here in the community is experiencing. I would say this, Tim, you can have good problems and you can have bad problems. And it's way more fun to have good problems. And it's things like, how do we scale? How do we take advantage of this opportunity but not blow it? And a lot of times the question isn't so much just how do we scale, it's what's your term for it? It's the pace at which decisions have to be made.
Yeah, that's all I've learned at scale is that it's the same decision, but they come at a faster pace with bigger repercussions. So what when I talk about that whole analogy of spinning plates, like honestly, it's like how well you can be skilled at doing that, because you have to put plates on faster, spin them faster, keep them going longer. But it's the skill is exactly the same, 1 or 12. It's the same process over and over. And I think a company that can function at scale works that way. But Joel, to your point, when you were running Impossible, the reason why you felt that pattern was broadcast had a certain pattern annual process that they did, right? And you're basically pre-upfronts. So there was always a lot of work at the end of the year. It was very quiet, and then you're working towards upfronts, and then you have this big peak in the middle of the year in order to hit the fall season, slow down the third quarter, big pick up the fourth quarter. That's the broadcast pattern. That has been broken. And that's what Hollywood Breaks, what we're adjusting in Hollywood Breaks, is how different the marketing patterns are. And if you're doing promos and marketing and movie titles and movie trailers, that whole world is upset. The pattern of that world is upset. The work is the same. And that's where we're trying that restructuring and repositioning that you're talking about helps people pivot within their marketplace so they don't feel so behind the eight ball. And that's the work that really takes, if you put your nose down, especially if you're busy, as you're saying, the company's at scale, the stress is still the same. You're still waking up at 2 a.m. You're just dealing with different issues at 2 a.m. So to be able to get outside of your skin for a minute and just think about the big pattern of not just what happened, but where you want to go, and that building your future opportunity really is in front of you to be able to make up your own rules, then create rules of engagement that work, and then get into relationships and eventually engagements with clients that those rules then apply. And that whole kind of demographic is why we're talking about the Challenger sale today. It's like, how do I get into that conversation? Because that reframe of the conversation is so important to get yourself comfortable with that pattern and honestly just relax. We all want a crystal ball, but what we really want is peace in our hearts that we're going to be okay and we can deal with the challenge.
Well said. That's actually a good point, because you're right. If I could see the future, sure, that would be nice. But really want to know is just that when I get there, I'm going to be okay. Like, just if I could have peace, regardless of what the outcome is, then I'm okay. It's funny, you're reminding me of the conversation we were just having yesterday. Remember when you said, Joel, this opportunity that we're discussing right now, it's crazy, because you remember we talked about this a year or two ago, and I swear it's like that whole the universe is listening thing, and we just put it out there, and here it is. And there's some sort of, I don't know, mystical or magical quality about that is you see it play out when you sit down and create a factors report with somebody and just say, look, we can create a scenario of what this year could look like, or it could look like this, or it could look like that. And then now you have this, it's like a roadmap. And now as you see those things coming at you, you have a decision called, do you like that? Do you want to influence that? Do you want to leave it alone? And I don't know, something about that makes that reality come into being in a strange way.
Yeah, look, so I'm an Irishman, right? Grew up in an Irish family. We have a lot of like relational conversations, and it's always big talking and parties and all that kind of stuff. But there are moments, I swear, that I just want to be Dutch, because the Dutch people have gorgeous yards. They accumulate wealth over a I know I'm stereotyping, but I'm having fun here. They accumulate wealth over a long amount of time. They honestly, everything's pristine, but it looks so great. But what I feel that they have is diligence. Like what they do is they attend to the matter, and as they attend to it, it changes the ultimate result of it. And in a way, sales, or let's say like your future, you have to be diligent about where do you want to go, and then that constant work to make it happen. So that opportunity you're talking about, which we're not going to name it because we can't name it right now, but the opportunity you're talking about was a conversation we had like a dream. But then you can almost feel the pattern now. Now you can recognize the pattern that you put in place over multiple months, slow conversations, attending to something, trying something out, see if it worked. And this slow growth and slow learning takes place. Then when the opportunity comes, you're like, it feels like magic, but what it was being very diligent along the way. And that's, I know I'm just going to repeat myself, but when I talk about systems and routines, I really am talking about visibility into your future, into your decisions, and diligently working your way toward that. And you can do it day after day, week after week, month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year. You can accomplish the career you want to accomplish. You have to have vision to get there, but that opportunity to make it happen. And then there's moments that we have to pivot. We're gonna have to respond to that.
For sure. All right. So I want to stay on that for 1 second, okay? Because I know we're going to talk about challenger sale goodness here in a second.
Yeah.
But what I kind of heard you saying, and this could be very cool for people listening,
or just cool for me.
Well, sure. But look, Tim, normally when you say systems and routines, and certainly when I say systems and routines, from for people that know me, there's a certain, let's face it, cringe factor for creative people. Because creative people hear systems and routines and they probably think handcuffs. Like, that doesn't sound fun because I just want to do what I want to do, kind of when I want to do it and how I want to do it, meaning freedom, freedom, freedom. I want to make cool stuff and I want to get paid well and I want to be famous and have my work seen by everybody in the world and so forth. So when I hear systems and routines, it sounds like you're limiting me or you're shackling me or something. But the way you just described it was very different. And I'm curious if you could explain, why are they not, should we not view systems or routines as handcuffs?
Sure. So imagine what your After Effects file would look like if you didn't apply systems and routines to that file. Like, if you just willy-nilly did whatever you want to every time you went after that project, it would be a total mess. The system is After Effects. It's a thing that contains certain rules of engagement, but when you engage it well, you get a sense of creative freedom. It's the tool you're using to make something happen. The routine is organizing the files so that you're not held back by doing small, meaningless tasks like finding the freaking file that you want to work with and getting it on that timeline. If your library is structured or your file is structured, you can easily work with the elements. That's all a system and routine is. It's really applying the system. But what I find, the reason why I put those two together, most people believe that technology is the answer. After Effects is the answer. But if you don't do After Effects well, After Effects isn't the answer. It's really your technique that applies to the technology. So, right, technology follows technique. So that your technique you apply to technology, they get you those results. Systems and routines are just ways of making that freedom, that exercise, work out the best way because you're maintaining it well. That's all they really mean. And that's in all of the ingredients, finance, sales, production, operations, entrepreneurship, creative, all of those have systems and routines that each of us manage. I just want people to recognize. I'm just calling it out like, hey, the financial systems routine are equal to your creative systems and routine. Don't be afraid of them, engage them. Do the same thing, the same ability, that same sense of freedom, the same excitement could be applied to any of those 7 ingredients.
You're reminding me when I was producing and not producing well. And then I grew up and realized I need to hire a producer. But what's funny is if I look back, I realize, well, I had a system. It just wasn't a very good one, but it was a system, right? But then when I hired a full-time producer and that was her genius and she ran the system, she ran it so much better, so much more dynamically, freed me up, all these kinds of good benefits. But it's funny to think, it's not like I was just freewheeling and having fun and doing whatever I want to do. I was just a bad producer, but I did have a system. I thought it was working right up until, I had a big project failure and a client who said, I'm never going to work with you again.
That's a wake-up call.
Yeah, it was. But it's just interesting to think back and realize it's not that I didn't have a system. I did.
We all do.
It just wasn't a very good one. And so same thing, if you go into After Effects and you make your project and you end up with any result, obviously you have a system. The question is,
production.
Is there
so
a better system?
Yeah, so with production, you can do a bid. That's a system, and you can do really big bidding. But if that bidding doesn't turn into a working budget, and that working budget doesn't track actuals, and then lastly, and most important for your future, if those actuals don't project cost remaining to complete the project, right, that last piece, then the routine doesn't matter how gorgeous that system is. You're not applying your technique, the effort into that system to give you the results you need to make your future. So resources work the same way. Like you could use LinkedIn and reach out to people willy-nilly and see if they can work for you, or you can systematically go and look at resources, grade them, track them, find out what they're working on, negotiate schedules, keep those contracts. Like there's every element in your production company needs diligence. It needs to take care of those small things on a very small routine basis. That's why we don't like big financial meetings. We don't like big, gigantic production meetings. We like these small touch-ins that are systematically programmed, very proactive in nature. So we don't have the crisis, we're avoiding crisis. And then we get to the other side. Sales, Joel, sales is the biggest one because so many of us want to just delegate sales off to someone and hope that the relationships make the sales. No way. Like, please just get Pipedrive, pay the $5 a month Pipedrive fee, make sure that thing works, and then learn how it works, because it's such a great program to get you into that thinking. It's awesome that way.
It's like the after effects of sales, right?
Totally. And so easy. I was talking to Marcel, I was working with Marcel, and he was asking questions about end of year. So he pulls up Pipedrive, and he was so excited because all the reports he can get out of it, his team was doing what they're supposed to do. They're using it the way they want to. And Marcel could then make his path. He can start talking about what he's going to do to leverage it because he had the right data managed accurately that was possible. So much excitement, so much freedom from a creative business owner. And that's just making sure sales, meeting with them slowly and weekly. He's not seeing any major progress on a weekly basis, but when he needs it, it's all there. It's so fun and so exciting to have that information.
Well, so at some point we're going to have Matt from Hugo talk, probably inside Confab, about the difference the roll-up made in his, let's just say it had so many strategic byproducts that he had no awareness of. Like, yeah, we're going to track our projects. Great. That sounds nice. And then the impact it had across all the areas of his business has been really profound. So that's another example. But I love your story of Marcel, because similarly, I have so many people that they're like, well, yeah, I've kind of got my system. It's called Post-it notes. Or I've got my system. I have my little Excel sheet, and I color code the block and so forth. And again, they are systems, but is there a stronger, better system that actually supports the real problem you're trying to solve? And often as an owner, the problem you're really trying to solve is decision making. How do I make decisions in an informed way that I can be proactive and I can create the future rather than just react to it?
The worst sales conversation, right? The worst sales assessment conversation is when the client says, I don't track my sales. My rep does that. And they refuse to share that information with me. Can you imagine the failure rate of that conversation? You don't know what's coming up. You can't engage that salesperson in a strategy to make that sale successful. So you have no visibility or understanding of even what the discernment is on project by project, what they're going after, if it's a win for you, if they're wasting their time. I'm going to pivot right now here into the challenger conversation, because this is why we chose this topic. It's so relevant in what we're seeing right now. But I'll do the segue. It's this, that the salesperson wants to tell us, no, it's about relationships. I have these relationships. I'm not going to give you my contacts, because that would be giving away all the value of my company, my relationships. And this foolish idea that relationship is so closely bound together that, and so valuable to me that if I were to share it with you, it totally breaks. Like, you have no relationship. If I can meet that person, if you just give me their email address and I can break your relationship, there's no value to the relationship, Joel. So that gap.
Let me
finish my last thought. Go ahead.
let me quote you first.
Yeah.
Before you finish that thought, because I love something. Remember something you said? I think it was at the Terranea event we did, when you were like, if somebody can steal something from you that easily, you probably never owned it in the first place.
That's exactly right. It's not yours. You didn't control. You don't own it. It's the loyalty really isn't that strong when it comes to business. Now, you can have a working relationship, and those are amazing. That's your collector stage. those are the things you've leveraged, relationship built, that clearly you want to have those. That's where you lean back on those relationships. All very, very wonderful. But when it comes to going after revenue for the next year, you have to have some clear roadmap of who we're going to approach, what kind of work they do, how that work matches the work that we do or would like to do, and then how do we position ourselves into that conversation. And in some cases, it's getting your face in front of that client to understand who you are. It's framing who you are so that client knows to engage you. And they might have a misperception. You're the broadcast design company. I didn't know you did main title sequences or something like that. And so you have to reframe. You have to rearrange their intellectual furniture in order for them to start engaging you. But that's the important part and the strategic part of sales that we all need to be part of. You can't delegate that part to a sales rep, hoping that sales rep can do and have your vision and act out your vision. That's not their vision. It's yours. You have to be part of that engagement.
So this concept of the challenger sale, there's a bit of a framework out there. I guess there's a book and there's an organization and so forth where the term comes from. When I first heard it, I thought, oh, this is for companies that want to be the challenger brand, how we sell into those. No. What it is how is the sales process a challenge? So rather than you as the salesperson just being helpful and being available and answering questions and giving people what they want, what they need, just bending over backwards to be helpful no matter what, right, is actually challenging your client. And at some point in this sales conversation, pushing back and asking some challenging questions. And like you said, even doing a reframe of asking them if they really understand the question. Do they really understand the problem and so forth? So I had to offer that. Now, I just want to comment real quick before you take the ball and run with it.
Sure.
Is this whole question of relationships, right? And you and I, of course, for a long time have taken issue with sales people who say, well, it's all about relationships and I have all the relationships, so therefore that's why I'm successful. Let's just agree that relationships are the table stakes, right? It's like, sure, it's your ticket onto the field. Now you can play in the game, but it's not the difference in winning or losing. It's just what gets you on the field. It's the thing that opens the door or keeps that door open. But I heard an analogy recently. You know how often I use dating as an analogy in sales? And I was talking with somebody and it occurred to us, you know what it's like when you as the owner say, we just need to hire a killer rep to go out and find us those amazing clients with those amazing projects for us. It's a little bit like hiring a dating service to go find you a spouse.
Yeah.
And that's when that occurred to me and I realized, wait, that's why it's a little bit unseemly.
Yeah.
Because if you as the owner are saying to somebody, go find me a spouse. I'm a busy executive. I don't really have time to find the love of my life. Can you go find the love of my life?
Yeah.
There's a strange, creepy thing called, I think this is your job. I don't think there's a certain degree to which you can't get out of it. Like you can't just completely abdicate this and I'm going to come back and say, okay, I went online and I searched, wives for sale and I found you one. Or whatever I don't want to take the analogy.
Please don't search that. Yeah, don't go.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But that's part of the reason I think that this whole idea of I'm just going to go find a great salesperson and they'll save me. They'll find my soulmate clients. They'll find my dream clients for me. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't actually play out that way. But
no,
let's get into the reframe.
It's a plot. It's a really good plot for a Will Smith movie. Like that's, the fixer kind of the Hitch guy or whatever.
Hitch.
No, you're talking about, you're getting into it well, because let's go back to the idea of the challenger sale or what we're really, why we like that as a conversation starter here. It's I have like I said earlier, I have an inbox full of demo reels. every production company has me on their mailing list, has sent me their 2020 demo reel. And how many do I need to see on LinkedIn before I start realizing, what am I really looking at here? How do I understand your demo reel? I know I know what brands you worked with. I know what pieces you did. I know that they're beautiful, but I already knew you existed. How, for me, where that falls short is that there is not an engagement. I didn't purposely say, hey, production company, have you ever done any animated cartoon work? And then show me examples of it so that my question, have you done this, has an answer that you can fulfill. You're basically answering a question that I never asked. The challenger conversation is one where we start asking those questions. We start with engaging a client, trying to discern what they're looking for, and positioning in such a way that we're telling them, you realize you have a problem, right? You understand you have a need, right? And positioning that need in such a way that they might say, wait a second, I have a need. What would that need be? And then you're able to give them that the outline of, well, in order to create value, you need to be able to satisfy a certain need within that field, and we're capable of doing that. That curiosity, that's what you'd like to call it, Joel, that curiosity that client would engage you back because they're curious about what you're saying, or they're curious about the answer to the question that you've asked, or curious about who you might be because of your positioning, that they want to find out more. That begins a brand new dialogue that they are framing. They're creating that outline of work that they want to do with you, and understanding of how and why they would engage your company to get that work done. Very, very different than, I just call my friend Bill. He always gives out $12,000 end tags. If we want $12,000, I'll call my friend Bill. Like, yeah, but what if I want a $200,000 car commercial? Yeah, but I have my friend Bill. Don't worry, my friend Bill gives us $12,000 when we need it.
Yeah, and of course, right, that's just putting a Band-Aid on the current challenge of the day. The larger question, back to this whole notion of where is your company going, how will that get you to where you want to go a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? But Tim, do you remember this this data we were looking at that I thought was really curious when I was looking at this PDF on the challenger sale concept? I thought this was kind of interesting, that there were these 5 types of sales people. So when they look at sales professionals, they fell into these categories of, there's the relationship builder, there's the problem solver, there's the hard worker, the lone wolf, and then the challenger. And the really interesting thing about the data is when you look at complex sales, and I'm going to say any project that's 6 figures or above is a complex sale. It's a high ticket sale. It's completely different than selling a $10,000 thing, or certainly a $10 widget.
Yeah, just your commodities, right?
Yeah. Here's what's fascinating is the relationship builder, as a percentage of what people are most successful at complex selling, the relationship builder was the least successful. Only 4% of high-performing sales professionals fall into the category of the relationship builder. So what does that tell you? And then the challenger is 54%. So when you look at complex sales and those 5 different types of salespeople, the challenger is where 54% of the successful salespeople, the category that they fit into. And I could share a lot more about that data, but isn't that really interesting that only 4% of people are like, oh, I have a relationship?
And this is exactly how many conversations that we had, Joel, with business owners that are so frustrated with their salesperson. They're so frustrated because they want that person to go after something different. They want them to create different opportunities, not the same old stuff. Or they honestly feel like, why do I need to keep you around? I already own all the clients. I already work with all the clients that you're bringing me. And that relational-based or relationship-based salesperson, it's so much work to them to re-engage in a relationship with somebody at Adobe that they've never talked to before. It takes them so long. The engagement is so long to get there, where the challenger basically knows to get into the conversation and create the edge, create the differential, and begin a curiosity conversation. It's not a relationship. It's a conversation about the services you provide and why you're relevant to the deal. So sure, it's 50-50, right? You win half of them, but the engagement time is so much shorter. And here, you want evidence of your person's relationship or not? Look at their pipe drive. Look how long it takes for them to go from lead to project. They're like, oh no, I'm still talking to so and so. It's been a year and a half. I'm still talking to them, and it's still sitting around on some sales form as if that's a sales lead. Like, that's not a sales lead at all. Sales leads are people with projects to get things done.
No, I forbid my clients to let those deals go stale. I'm like, you're either going to close it or kill it. There's no like letting this linger thing happen. But let me say this, Tim, to anyone who's hearing us bash on this whole relationships thing and thinking, well, wait a minute, I do have really great relationships with my clients, and that's why they do business with me. Mm-hmm. My encouragement would be to say, well, yes, of course you have incredible relationships with your clients, but I would just encourage you to recognize that's an important part of why they do business with you, but it's not the only reason. And I'll give this one example. I can think back to years ago when one of my colleagues and I, we were going to New York, and we had been doing some business with Sundance. And I reached out to the GM at the time. Her name was Sarah. I'd never met her, but she was the boss of the people I'd been working with. And I was like, hey, I would love to have dinner with you. My colleague and I would love to take you to dinner to discuss like the state of the industry. And she said, that sounds great. Well, I was on the hook. Guess what I had to do? I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of research on Sundance, where they were at, so that I could show up for that dinner and have a conversation. Now, sure, I'm building a relationship and we're being friendly and so forth, but I was asking a lot of interesting questions in that dinner, right? And I'm having this out-of-body moment where I'm like, how did I get here? I'm having dinner with the general manager of Sundance Channel, but what kind of questions was I asking? Things like, what's the deeper problem that's beneath these projects that we've been doing for you? Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a provocative question. Here's another one. Are you guys getting the results that you expected? That's a challenging question. And then probably my favorite of all, have you thought about blank? Like, have you thought about doing this? Have you considered maybe trying that? Have you gone down this path? Because these are all actually challenging them, not saying I'm just here to give you what I'm not an order taker. No, I'm actually trying to reframe and ask you challenging questions. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a conversation and walk away from that dinner saying, wow, really intelligent person who has an expertise and a point of view. And I think I see something that I didn't see before.
And I see something in that person that I'm not getting from anybody else. I might not fully agree with them, but that person is unique, and it was a worthwhile conversation.
And was that dinner just a relationship? Is that the whole reason that Sarah called us later and we did however many projects? It was part of it, but no, it was way more than that. So I just want owners to recognize the relationships. Yes, they're really important, but you are giving so much more to your clients in the form of expertise and original thought.
Don't hear what we're not saying, for sure. Relationships are really important. What we're talking about is the complex sale. If a person is already your client, the complex sale is done. The relationship is now what matters. So recurring revenue, retained clients, that kind of stuff, that work is really important. But I would argue that work is the work of your production team. That's the team that's engaged with that client, what's there. Those need to be people that are relationally selling over and over and over again to your recurring clients. When what you want to have at least one person in your company that's out there finding new leads, and that's a complex sale. That's a person that can evangelize your cause to people that have not heard about it and doing something different. And that conversion from complex to relational is a good understanding and a good thing that you need to have in place and recognize when it's happening. Don't go after a complex sale to the same client. They're going to burn them out. So we want both. We want retained earnings, but most of us are looking for a future. We're looking for some sort of growth, some sort of new opportunity, and you're not going to get that using the same method you're using now. So that's our challenge, especially looking into 2021. How do we help you create that future? How do we make you think about where you want to be by the time this, January 2022 comes around? What's going to be new about you, and how are we going to help you accomplish that goal?
Well, dude, I am laughing because we've already gone 5 minutes over our 30-minute allotment, and we haven't brought anybody into the conversation. We don't even have time for questions. So apologies to folks here. I would just say maybe if people have questions or comments, drop them in the community because this replay will be posted there shortly, and it's also on YouTube. So thanks for reminding us to do that, Tim.
Yep.
But we should wrap it up because I know everyone has calls and meetings and things that we need to get to. So thanks for doing this today.
Yeah. It's great to do a weekly briefing with you and look forward to doing more next week. If you have topics you want us to discuss, we're happy to put them on our list and beat them dead like we did this one. So happy to do it.
Exactly. All right. Thank